Welcome to the SNN.Network Canada virtual event. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Scott Tillman, CEO of Minerva Intelligence. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone listening in. I appreciate people taking some time out of their day. So I am here to tell you a little bit about Minerva Intelligence and the very exciting things we have going on here. I will not spend too much time on the disclaimer statement. I'm sure we've seen many of them. But moving straight into the meat and potatoes of our presentation, what we are doing is helping to deal with climate risk problems. I think, it's kind of front and center these days. Climate risk is real. The threats are manifesting at an ever quicker rate. The impacts are very clear on populations, businesses, governments, and some of the things that are kind of changing are that the data that is available so that we can take the appropriate actions to understand and mitigate risk, it's changing. And you can't always rely on the past to give you a good idea what is going to happen in the future. You've got investors who are seeking more transparency related to climate risks of their investments. Governments are mandating disclosure of environmental risks. Asset owners, they need better information about what decisions they're going to make that will impact their future. So there's just a unrelenting demand for more and more data and understanding about what is going on in our world. And the problem is that there's really limited models and data, and we're kind of driving into the future a bit blind. And as I said, we can't really rely on some of those past events to really help us understand what's going to happen in the future. So we call these unmodeled risks. This is just a bit of background. The TCFD, the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, has stated that they think that there's upwards of $1 trillion of risk within just a few hundred companies. You've got Larry Fink at BlackRock speaking about climate risk being a direct investment risk. And across many of the larger investing forums, you are seeing legislation being introduced to help disclose on 10Ks and various forms what that risk looks like. And primarily that's in North America and Europe, as well as Australia and New Zealand. To give everyone an idea as to kind of where we play within climate risk, because it's clearly a large area, we're not doing anything within batteries or carbon pricing or the regulatory or technological side. We are housed firmly in what we call the physical risk, which is understanding the physical risks that I've got here, which can be acute or chronic, but that could be heat stress, water stress, wildfires, droughts, floods, landslides. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that we have been hearing more and more in the news. So who we are is we are a company that strives to improve human decision-making by helping users reason with various complex data sets. We have expertise in what we call cognitive AI tools that more or less mimic human expert-based reasoning and provide explainable results and assessments that make it so that even if you're not an expert, you can clearly understand the underlying risks. We are a team of a little bit over 20 and growing. With COVID, we're a bit more dispersed, but our headquarters is in Vancouver, and we have employees kind of throughout Canada, and I myself am based in the US. Where we're going with all of this is, pardon me, didn't go to the next slide. Where we are going with all of this is pushing what we call our Gaia Climate Risk AI group. And this slide will give you an actual live look into a product that we have been working on. But we build tools that mimic the experts, as I said, and we can get down to understanding individual building risk. We can also help better understand risk to large-scale infrastructure that maybe isn't insured, pipelines, rail lines, those sort of things. And the special sauce there is that we're able to give, again, these explainable results. So what this is looking at here is a live example of a demo product that we are working on with a publicly traded REIT to help them better understand the holdings that they have, to also understand pools that they may or may not want to buy. And there's, as I mentioned, there's a lot of issues with the data out there. In the U.S., the FEMA flood maps have proven to be woefully inadequate, and yet they are some of the best that are out there in the world. But it is clear that if you are in an area that is labeled as a 100-year floodplain and you've had 4 floods in the last decade, we probably can't rely on that being a 100-year floodplain anymore. And sometimes the inverse happens too. The FEMA flood maps will tell you that things are a little bit worse than they might be in one particular area. So we think that there's just a wide open area for us to go out there and tackle some of these different problems and opportunities. We primarily are focusing on 3 of the risks right now. We started off in landslides. We have active demonstration products in the Veneto area of Italy, and we also have some demonstration products available in British Columbia, Canada. I would highly encourage anyone on the call to go to our website. You just have to provide your email address, and then you can click around and get a better understanding for how some of these tools work. But what they do is they allow for a deep understanding as to kind of what is going on, as well as the explainability, so that the decision makers can not only make the decision, but they can point to why they made the decision. And oftentimes in artificial intelligence, that just simply isn't the case. You get an answer and you're not really quite sure why you got the answer, but the black box told you so. And when it comes to things like landslides and floods, the decision makers need a little bit more than just, well, the machine told me so. We are very active in floods. The last figure I showed you was, as I mentioned, an active flood map that we are working on selling. And we are hoping to move more aggressively into wildfire. We've only been able to do some beta products there. And the sad reality is that every time we have been about to start, the experts within that domain have had to go and battle actual fires. These are some of the representative projects that we have going on right now. We are very proud of the fact that our climate risk group has won every contract that we've gone out for thus far. And those contracts have been within the Canadian government, and we think that that is an incredibly good stamp for us to have. There's a lot of customers out there, but to get the government to endorse you and also repeatedly choose you is something that we're very proud of. And these projects are in many cases going to be the building blocks of how we look at the next couple of years of where the company is going to be moving itself. But to dive into each of these a little bit, one at the bottom here, the National Hydrographic Network, we basically were coming up with a standard for water data within Canada. And when you're dealing with data, you need standards. So this is a kind of critical underpinning to everything we're doing. And we are also working on a flood hazard data layer, which is basically aggregating all of the Canadian flood hazard data and putting it into those new standards that we mentioned. And at the top of the page there, our most recent win, which is my favorite, quite honestly, is the Canadian Coastal Zone project. And that is basically going to be looking at how multiple hazards will affect the coastline of Canada as climate changes. There's issues that range from sea level rise and storm surge, but you also have issues with landslides and subsidence. And then there's the fact that Canada also has the largest coastline in the world. So this project is one that we are incredibly excited about. The first phase is to basically bring all of that information from all the provinces and put it into one repository. That is the phase we have won. The second phase is one that we are quite confident we will continue our flawless streak with the government, but that one is a $1 million contract to develop for the government an app. And that app would be available for people to use to, again, help better understand their environment. The plan there is that the government then wants you to commercialize it. but our plan is a little bit more aggressive in that we plan to, in parallel with working on it for the government under the assumption we win it, develop it for commercial entities as well. So this is one that we're very, very excited about and think it has great applicability within the insurance worlds, also owners of uninsurable large assets. And so, again, this is one that we think will really help pave the way for us as we move further and further into climate. And now the next slide here is a bit about kind of where we came from. Our history was in mining. We developed many of our tools to help deal with the fact that in mining, you never are going to have all the information you want. You're always going to have holes in your data. And we have found that the same is true within climate, which is why we have moved there. But our mining tools are really what have kind of built the underlying products that we will expand into. I won't spend too much time here because, the mining sector is a little bit smaller and not quite as blue sky as where we think things will go with climate. But it is absolutely something that we're proud of. And from a commercial standpoint, we have really rounded out a series of robust products. And the sales has been something we've been proud of. We commercialized most of these tools earlier in the year. And if you've been following us for a while, we said, the proof will be in the pudding. The proof is in. We are now dealing with a healthy roster of clients across all of our products. And these are the products here. We've got really 4. Leo is a product that can be used for effectively just searching throughout documents with quick indexing, tagging, search functionality, and all this will be based on kind of an expert scientific domain. So we've developed this within geology, but this is a tool that could be used within law, environmental issues, many others. And then Solace is a suite that basically harmonizes poorly structured data. And both of those products really lead to the 2 products that we get our larger revenue with Terra from. Target is pretty much what it sounds like. It is a prospectivity map that helps users target areas that they could find whatever ore bodies they're looking for, as well as multiple ore bodies. And then the product, though, that is pretty much the most active today is our driver product, which is an extraordinarily robust product that we're on version 2. And it effectively it optimizes underutilized drilling data with 3D analysis of multi-element zones. And what that means is with a limited amount of scoping, we can help you refine where you should either go out and do your next drill targeting program or just help you better refine where it is you're going to actually drill. And so this can help you avoid things like penalty minerals. Maybe you're looking for gold, but there's some arsenic cohabitated with it. That would be bad. Maybe you weren't even looking for it. Alternatively, we can also give you a better zonation of how the ore body is looking underneath the surface. And this is a product that we have really seen a lot of traction with in the last couple of months. And we have also been fortunate enough to have had a couple of customers go out there and give us their data, and then we have been able to give them recommendations that they have been able to go back out into the field with, and the results have been fantastic. It is working, efficacy is there, and they are coming back for more. So this is something that we're very excited about, and we have just moved it into being a SaaS product. So moving into 2022, we will be signing up companies on a licensed basis, and we've got a pricing structure that we can kind of go through at another time. But the highlights here are that the underpinnings are our mining group, and where the future is in our climate group. Just to highlight a couple of the companies that we've worked with and some revenue details. So we basically think of ourselves as a startup. We were funded in 2019 and went public. So that's why you see in 2018 that there was no real revenue. 2019 and 2020 were both really pilot projects and, kind of consulting type jobs, whereby we were able to learn quite a bit, get a lot of very, very valuable customer feedback, and really put that into our thinking about how we were going to develop the products. And then, as I mentioned a bit ago, if you've been following us, we have said that 2021 is when you will see us start to commercialize things. And clearly you can see that that has started to happen. Our revenue is a bit lumpy as we're young, but we'll probably exceed the $1 million revenue number for 2021. And our expectations are that we are only just getting things going. Moving on, I didn't mention the clients. There are so many more customers that I look forward to them telling us that we can add them to this list here. But of course, we're very proud and happy of the customers we do have here. They run the gamut from big to small. And you can also see there the government, which I mentioned, is really going to be what drives us forward with our climate division. And then to get into just some high-level facts, our market cap has probably moved up a bit from there if I saw the stock correctly earlier this morning. We have a strong amount of insider ownership. I think that number is continuing to move up. I myself own quite a number of shares. We recently completed a recapitalization, so our balance sheet is in good standing at this point with, as of the end of Q3, a bit over $4 million. And excuse me. And then in terms of our team, I mentioned early on that we've got about 20 team members. Here are some of the kind of highlights. Our chairman comes out of the Bay Area, having just successfully exited from Skills. We have, board members that have experience within banking, within AI. Our co-founder, Clinton Smythe, is an expert geologist as well as an expert computer scientist. I myself come out of Wall Street and a number of entrepreneurial pursuits. And on the right side here, we've got kind of the heart and soul of Minerva. We have a fantastic team from our COO to our president to our chief technology officer and CFO. Down at the bottom is somebody who we just added that we think is going to be critical to our future success, and that is our VP of Sales and Partnerships. Grant has just joined us and is already taking no prisoners. And there's about 15 more people, and we've recently added, I want to say 3 climate scientists within the last month. At this point, I'd like to open it up to any Q&A that we have, and I'll go into this here.
Thanks, Scott. It's Corey here. I can take over from here on the Q&A if you can hear me all right.
Sure, I can. Thanks, Corey.
Fantastic. So our first question asks, where do you see the company in 2 to 3 years' time from now?
I think that, this is kind of the beginning of the wave for us. We've proven efficacy within geology. I think that will be a nice little division that will continue to grow. But when I look at the things that are starting to happen within climate and the conversations we're having, I think we will be in a totally different world. The revenue numbers should be moving up. I think our products will have gotten to a point where people are calling us and we're not calling them. We're also looking at expanding. Most of our work within climate, as I mentioned, has been within Canada, but we are looking to expand that. So we're currently working on a proposal for a project in Germany. We're working on some proposals to help people better understand if their carbon offsets are actually even worth anything from the standpoint of utility. So I think, it's a big blue sky, and we are very, very excited about the future there, and imagine that we will continue to see some pretty strong revenue growth and add more and more partners. And as I said, we are taking that the government contracts and really using that to try and leverage ourselves into bigger, I shouldn't say bigger, but more aggressive players like the insurance and reinsurance companies, as well as the owners of linear infrastructure.
Great, thank you. That actually leads quite well into our next question, is about insurance and reinsurance. Could you expand a little bit more on the opportunity that exists in those markets and really how Minerva fits in there?
Yeah. So, insurance obviously is all about understanding risk and, the amount of catastrophic loss that the insurers and reinsurers have been experiencing over the last couple of years has really been eye-opening. And the insurance companies have typically used some similar skills and tools to help them look forward. But the reality is some of those tools just don't work anymore. And we recently, and this is something that I'm really happy about, but we recently had an insurance industry executive reach out to us just because he was curious and thought that what we were doing was novel. And he mentioned that, if you look at things like flooding, as I mentioned, that you just can't rely on historical data because it doesn't work for the future. Things are changing. And so, we're working with him to see if we can't break into some more insurance companies, get some pilot projects going, because the numbers there are simply astounding. And if you can make just even a small modicum of difference, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that you could be saving insurance companies, without even batting an eye. So insurance is an area that we are very, very aggressively going to push into, ideally having partnerships first, because the way we approach things is that we think it's imperative that you actually get customer feedback. We don't want to do field of dreams and build it and hope they come. So, that is something that we're really excited about happening in 2022.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question asks a little bit about the technology and how it's different from machine learning. Could you expand on that scope, please?
Yeah. So artificial intelligence is, it's a pretty wide field, but I would suggest that most people, and myself included, quite honestly, before I joined Minerva, really think of machine learning as artificial intelligence, and it's a part of artificial intelligence, but it's certainly not all. And, machine learning has huge limitations. You require massive amounts of training data, and there's often cases where that data just simply isn't available. You could think about, mining. You're not going to be able to go out there and have drill holes every 10 feet. You could think about climate, and you don't have that future data. You can only look at the past and try and make extrapolations into the future. So machine learning is great if you've got, a billion pictures of a cat and you want to understand, Google Photos telling you it's a cat, but if it gets it wrong, you don't know why it's wrong. So what we do is cognitive AI, which is a different way of thinking about artificial intelligence, whereby we basically take the models that an expert would have and compare that to the real world. So a way I like to explain it to my friends that I think is pretty digestible is, if you're not feeling well and you go to your doctor, your doctor has very limited data about you when you walk in the door, but the doctor has a Rolodex of things within their minds that they are aware of from, all sorts of diseases and what could make people feel sick. And so when you walk in, they start asking you a couple of questions. And with each question, they get a little bit closer to saying, aha, this is my diagnosis. And, they may be a great doctor and they can just get it with one fact. Maybe it takes more. And maybe as you go further, it's like, well, if you're feeling this way, then I feel pretty confident that it's actually this disease. We do that same thing. We can take limited data and compare it to, in the example of a doctor, all the things that doctor learned in medical school and in their practice. And we are comparing the real world to those expert models. And with each little bit of new information, we can get either more or less confident in the conclusion we're making, and we can tell you why, though, which is where it's dramatically different than the black box of machine learning. And so, again, going back to that doctor, if they're concerned you have COVID, but you're walking in there and your symptom is not a COVID-like symptom, they're probably going to say, okay, wait, maybe it's not COVID. So that's really the big difference between kind of the cognitive AI approach and the machine learning approach. And, to be clear, machine learning, like we use machine learning within many of our products because it is fantastic. But we just believe that it has limitations in some expressions where you need to get different kinds of answers.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Our next and final question asks about corporate issuers and them looking to basically report out what their exposures are from a climate risk perspective. Is there an opportunity for Minerva to add value for issuers who want to explain to investors what climate risks they face?
Yes. I touched on it early, but the regulatory environment is changing. The SEC, within Canada, Europe, they are all mandating that companies begin to better disclose what their financial risks are associated with climate. We can help on two levels. One is we can help when it comes to just understanding the risk of the assets they own. So, if you imagine it's a rail company, we can help understand that, whatever that PP&E line is on their balance sheet, maybe 10% of it is subject to risk that they weren't quite aware of. So we can help understand the physical risks associated with what they have. And then we also, from just a purely reporting standpoint, everything we do is based on words and explainability and auditability. And if you carry that thought through, financial reports are filled with words. So we can offer some help there in how a lot of that stuff is done. So I think that when we look at financial reporting, there's a pretty big avenue to get involved.
Fantastic, thank you. It looks like we are pushing up on the end of time here, so I will leave it with you with any closing remarks, and then we can close up shop.
All right, great. Well, I appreciate everyone taking some time out of their day. Encourage anyone who is interested to reach out to us directly. Our website, MinervaIntelligence.com. You can shoot us an email at info@MinervaIntelligence.com, and we will get back to you quite quickly. But we are hoping that some of you are as excited about the ride that we're on as we are. And with that, I wish everyone a great day. Thank you so much.